The Distinguished Public Service Award was first presented in 1963. It is presented to a member of Congress who has demonstrated extraordinary devotion and energy to the success of legislative efforts to serve the American people. Previous recipients of this award include House Speaker Tip O'Neill, Congressman Sonny Montgomery, Edward Hebert, and Jerry Solomon, as well as Senators Everett Dirksen, Strom Thurmond, John Glenn, Bob Dole, and John Warner. This year's recipient was born in Nebraska, but due to his father's service in the U.S. Air Force, his family moved a great deal. He eventually earned an appointment to the U.S. Naval Academy, graduating in 1968 as a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps. He served in Vietnam as a platoon leader, earning the Navy Cross, Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars, 2 Purple Hearts, and after leaving the Marine Corps, he earned a law degree, worked on the staff of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, served in the Reagan administration as Secretary of the Navy, and has written a number of books. In 2006, he ran for U.S. Senate from Virginia, winning a narrow victory. One of his first acts was to introduce the Post-911 Veterans Educational Assistance Act, which became law in 2008. He completed his term of office in the Senate earlier this year. He is a man of courage, intelligence, and integrity, and is a worthy addition to the many previous recipients of this award. The text of the Distinguished Public Service Award. Presented to Senator Jim Webb in recognition of your distinguished service, including your service in the United States Marine Corps, followed by your service with the Department of Defense and the Secretary of Navy. For your service in the United States Senate, including your introduction and support for the Post-911 Veterans Educational Assistance Acts enacted in 2008. For your consistent involvement in Asian and Pacific affairs, and for your consistent support for the Second Amendment, presented in Washington, D.C., February the 26th, 2013, signed by National Commander Couts and National Adjutant Wheeler. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the American Legion family, please give a warm welcome to this year's recipient of the Distinguished Public Service Award, Senator Jim Webb of Virginia.
How are you doing, sir? Good to see you. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you very much. Commander Counts, fellow Vietnam veteran, all of you today who are here, who have spent a portion of your lives serving our country. I'm wondering how many of you were here in the Midwinter Conference in 1979? I was here. In fact, it was one of the great honors of my life in terms of veteran service that 34 years ago, almost exactly to this day, I was the recipient of the American Legion National Commander's Public Relations Award, having been the first Vietnam veteran to serve as a full committee counsel in the Congress, and then having written my first novel, Fields of Fire, which was a novel about the Marine Corps in Vietnam. And that week, there was a huge snowstorm hit Washington, D.C., probably 23-inch snowstorm, and I had recently taken a break from the time I was spending as a committee counsel on the Veterans Committee and was teaching poetry in the novel at the Naval Academy, and I was living in a neighborhood that probably still hasn't had its street scraped whenever it snows. I remember getting up in the morning with a shovel and saying, I'm going to get out of here, and I'm going to go to the Hilton, and I'm going to be with the American Legion and receive that award. And that award, the National Commander's Public Relations Award, has been on my office wall ever since. And this award, which I deeply appreciate, will join it. I was asked to speak for 5 to 7 minutes, which, as anyone who's listened to a senator speak knows, is a real chore. And I'm going to try to do that. Let me just say 3 things to you today that can in some way sum up how strongly I feel about the issues that we all are here today to discuss. The first is my respect for the American Legion. I learned when I was a committee counsel all those years ago after leaving the Marine Corps how important it was to work directly with the major veterans groups when you're considering legislation. I was very lucky at that time to have been under the mentorship of some really terrific World War II veterans and to have served on the Veterans Committee staff under it wasn't even a bipartisan committee. It was a nonpartisan committee with Ray Roberts, Sonny Montgomery, and John Paul Hammerschmidt. We would sit down, examine what we thought was best for the veterans, pull in the major veterans groups to take advantage of the years of experience that people who serve in these veterans groups have on the Title 38 issues and on the broader policy issues, and come up with solutions. I would like to see, quite frankly, more of that in the present congressional system. It's a comment that I made to a number of my colleagues during my tenure in the Senate. This is a valuable tool. I know that a lot of discussions do take place, but I think there should be more. And particularly, because as all of you know, there are so few staffers in the United States Congress now who have military service. The second thing I would like to say is how strongly I feel about those who step forward and serve their country. This isn't something that I took on when I came to the United States Senate, as I think all of you know. I grew up in the military. My dad was a pilot. He served in World War II, the Berlin Airlift. I got his ears blown out in a cockpit accident when he was transitioning into jets. Later became a pioneer in the Atlas missile program. He graduated from college my senior year in high school. Any of you ever seen that movie, The Great Santini? It was a great Santini moment. My dad, after 26 years of night school, breaking out of the line and coming up and putting the diploma in my face and saying, "You can get anything you want in this country and don't you ever forget it." I know what it's like to have those long months at home when one of your parents is off deployed somewhere. I served in the Marine Corps. One of the greatest prides of my life was having been entrusted with the command of infantry Marines in combat. You know, we tend, I'm going to say this here, I think Commander Counts, I hope, agrees here. We talk a lot, and we should talk a lot, about what's been happening over the last 10 years. We don't talk enough about what happened during the Vietnam War. Check your politics at the door. Think about what that service meant to our country. In 1969, when I was in Vietnam, that was the year of Hamburger Hill, we lost 12,000 Americans. We lost twice as many in 1 year as have been lost in Iraq and Afghanistan combined in the last 10 years of war. 1968 was worse. 1967 was about the same. And a lot of us here have memories about how difficult it was for so many of those who had given that kind of hard combat duty on behalf of their country to be accepted, even by their own peers when they came back. And that was something that I decided when I left the Marine Corps that I would always dedicate a part of my life to resolving. I know what it's like to have a son deployed in harm's way. My son, as many of you know, dropped out of Penn State. Here was the ultimate father-son trip. I went to Afghanistan as a journalist in 2004 as an embed, and when Parade Magazine asked me if I would go, I said, "Will you let me take my son as my photographer?" And they said, "Okay." I said, "Will you let me write the story from Saigon?" They said, okay. I said, well, I'll do this. But my son came with me, like I say, the ultimate father-son trip, into a hot combat zone. He did a great job. He got the cover of Parade magazine. Then went over to Saigon. I took him up to the battlefields where I had fought as a Marine. He came back and he said, why am I in school? And he said, I'm looking at people who are out doing what our country needs. Why am I in school? I dropped out of school, enlisted in the Marine Corps, fought in Ramadi as a lance corporal, infantry lance corporal, in some of the hardest fights of that war. And the point is, I know what it's like to sit at home and wake up every morning and wonder what's going on, wonder if your kid is still alive. Those things motivate every day of my life. And they were a principal reason that the day that I was sworn in as a senator, I put into the hopper the post 9/11 GI Bill. And this kind of goes to the third point, the final point that I would like to mention to you, and that is, what do we do? What do we do to ask policymakers who are looking at veterans issues to put the money where the mouth is? You know, to really walk the walk if they're going to talk the talk. When I put that GI Bill in, I said, you know, you keep saying this is the next greatest generation. Well, remember what we did for the greatest generation. We gave them, until recently, the best GI Bill in history. We paid their tuition. We bought their books. We gave them a stipend. And for every dollar, every tax dollar that we put into the World War II GI Bill, we got $7 back in terms of tax remunerations because of the successful careers that had been created. Let's do that. There's no reason not to do that. Let's do that for the people who'd served since 9/11. And we did. It took us 16 months, which is kind of unheard of in normal Congress time. And as I just think I heard Secretary Shinseki say a few minutes ago, there are something like 900,000 people now who have a chance at a first-class future because of that GI Bill. Something else you can do, since this is your midwinter and you're going to be walking around to the different congressional offices. I had a good friend, a senator, came up to me a few months ago, knowing that I was leaving the Senate, and said, what can we do? What can we really do? What's your number one thing that we can do in terms of helping veterans? And I said, how many veterans on your staff? I said, if you want to help a veteran, hire one. You know, on any given day on my staff in the United States Senate, we probably had 10 veterans from all eras, from Vietnam all the way to Iraq and Afghanistan. And if I had one thing, measurable thing, that you could put on the table in every congressional office you go into is, how many veterans on your staff? You know, all the rest of it's talk, folks. So again, Commander Counts, I thank you very much for recognizing me with this award, and to all of you who are here, I appreciate what you have done for your country and what you are doing now on behalf of those who served. Thank you very much.